Hello, YouTube. My name is Christian Brindle. I'm a licensed insurance agent in multiple different states. I specialize in Medicare health plans, and I own Christian Brindle Insurance Services. I also host the Everything Medicare Podcast, and today I wanted to bring you this video where we're going to be breaking down exactly what you need to know, what you need to look for, what steps you need to follow when you're turning 65 and getting onto Medicare. Thanks so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoy what's to come. Hi folks, Christian Brindle here, and today I'm bringing you the ultimate guide to getting on to Medicare step by step. No more confusion and real answers that you can apply to whatever situation that you're in. Let's get started. So there's a lot of different working parts of Medicare. You always hear these different parts tossed around, and it can be a little overwhelming and a bit confusing. You have your Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B, Medicare Part C, Medicare Part D. You hear about things like F, G, N, K, L, and it can be very, very overwhelming for the average person turning 65 and getting onto Medicare. Now, the Medicare program is available for people that are turning age 65 or older that are going to be retired. Now, you can get Medicare if you're under the age of 65 if you've been on Social Security disability for 24 consecutive months. On the 24th month, you'll be placed on what's known as Medicare disability, which essentially works the same as original Medicare, regular Medicare, no differences. Now, today we're going to be talking about how Medicare works. So let's start with the basics. You have Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B, which come from CMS. CMS is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, so the government. Despite what you might think, preconceived notions coming into this, these are the only parts of Medicare that come from the government. Everything else you hear about when it comes to Medicare is provided through a private insurance company, whether it be Medicare Advantage, Medicare Part C, Medigap, Medicare Supplement, Medicare Part D, and I could go on and on. So just keep that in mind. A and B come from the government. Nothing else does. So let's talk about Medicare Part A first. What does Medicare Part A cover? Because Medicare Parts A and B both cover different things. They both cover medical benefits, but they both cover different types of medical benefits that you can kind of piece together like a puzzle that essentially work together to provide a person medical coverage. Now, Medicare Part A will cover hospital stays, surgeries, skilled nursing facility care, lab tests, home health care, hospice care, etc. Now, Medicare Parts A and B do not pay 100% of the things that they cover. So I wanted to get that out of the way first. They typically have deductibles like a lot of insurances do, but then after those deductibles are met, they typically will pay 80% of the bill and leave you behind with 20% of the bill. So it's never recommended to just take A and B by itself because they just don't give you enough coverage. Medicare does not have any type of maximum out-of-pocket like most insurances do. They don't have a cutoff point that kind of limits them from charging you a certain amount of money. So if you have a $100,000 hospital bill, they're going to pay 80% of that after you've met certain deductibles. And then after that, you'll be left at 20%. So please keep this in mind on how this works. Now let's talk about Medicare Part B. Medicare Part B covers clinical research, durable medical equipment, ambulance services, some outpatient prescription drugs. Those would be high expensive injectables you get in a doctor's office or a hospital or facility. Mental health care, getting a second option before surgery, and so on and so forth. There's additional things on top of this. But these are some notable things that Medicare Part B covers. Medicare Part A costs nothing in the terms of premium as long as you have worked in the United States for at least 10 years of your life. This was paid for in the form of FICA taxes throughout your working life. So basically, you shouldn't have to pay anything for Medicare Part A. If you don't have these working credits, you may have to pay a premium for Medicare Part A. Medicare Part B, on the other hand, does have a monthly premium that's associated with it of $144.60 per month, unless you're in a higher tax bracket, in which case it can be more than that, depending on your situation. Medicare Part B can have the premium paid by Medicaid if someone qualifies for their state's Medicaid. So Medicare Part B does have a premium. Medicare Part B essentially if you are drawing off of Social Security when you're approaching turning 65, you will automatically be enrolled into Medicare Parts A and B. You won't have to do anything. But that $144.60 will automatically be deducted monthly from your Social Security check. If you're not drawing off Social Security, you have to enroll yourself. And we will leave a link down in the description to a video where we do a tutorial on how to enroll yourself onto Medicare if you're turning 65 online. Very, very easy. Easiest way to do it, in my opinion. Now, if you do it that way, they will send you a bill in the mail for 3 months' worth. They bill Medicare Part B premiums quarterly when they send them out in the form of paper bills. There is a way to set it up to come out monthly of a bank account if you want to, but that's a topic in a video for another day. What does Medicare not cover on its own? Well, A and B are not going to provide you with dental, vision, and hearing benefits. They're not going to cover prescriptions with the exception of high-expense injectables received in a doctor's office or facility, like I mentioned earlier. There's certain preventative care that Medicare does not cover, like Medicare doesn't cover a physical, a traditional physical, after your first year. In your first 12 months, they give you what's known as a Welcome to Medicare physical. After that, they're not going to pay for one. They'll pay for what's known as a wellness visit, which is a less detailed physical. But if you go in and say you want a physical, you'll end up paying the bill out of pocket. Also, they do not cover long-term care. So, you know about A and B. You kind of know what the coverage looks like in a nutshell. So, how do you fill in these gaps as far as paying the 20% that Medicare leaves behind? Or I should say, providing you prescription coverage, providing you some dental, vision, hearing coverage. Well, despite what you might hear about Medicare, and despite how complicated that the industry tries to make it out to be, there are only 2 ways you can go with your Medicare. And in my opinion, I think 80% of the difficulty for most people is determining which way of these 2 ways that they actually would prefer to go and they'd be best off at. I'm going to start this out by saying that I do not have a preference. I personally believe that both sides have their positives and negatives, and both have good and bad to them, and depending on who you are, what your situation is, and what's available to you and where you live in your market, because the plans are differently priced and the benefits can be a little stronger or weaker depending on where you live. So a lot of it depends on where you live, your specific needs and preferences, and kind of what you prefer your plan to look like. But I'm going to go through both sides and kind of break down what we're looking at here, and maybe this might help clear up which way you might want to go if you're turning 65. So we're going to start on the left-hand side where it says Original Medicare. So you see your Parts A and Part B at the top. We've kind of talked about kind of what that equates to. You can pick up what's known as a Medigap policy in the bottom left-hand corner as a Medicare supplement policy. Now, a Medicare supplement policy are purchased through private insurance companies. These would be plans that are named after letters, such as a Plan F, a Plan G, a Plan N, a Plan K, a Plan L, etc., etc. So you pick these up through private insurance companies. These plans are designed by the government as far as what percentage of the 20% that Medicare leaves behind that they are going to pay and what percentage they're not going to pay. Some plans pay everything, some plans pay only a little bit, some pay almost everything. So these plans are designed by the government, designed by Medicare, and then they are given to private insurance companies to market. What this means is Medicare supplement plans are standardized, meaning that you can literally get the same plan through multiple different insurance companies and the benefits will be identical across the board. The only difference will be each insurance company will charge a different price, so keep that in mind. So you could literally get, let's say, a Plan G, for example, which is a very popular Medicare supplement plan. And you'd get the same benefits from a Plan G with one company than you'd get from all companies, although one company might charge twice as more than another company. Medicare supplement plans are quite simple. They come through and pay what Medicare Parts A and B leave behind. So if Medicare pays 80% of a bill, the Medicare supplement plan will come through and pay what Medicare does not pay. And depending on the company, depending on the plan, you could have potentially full medical coverage. The rules with the supplement are simple. If Medicare pays for something first, they will come through and pay afterward. If Medicare does not cover something, the supplement will not either. We can almost look at it like a copycat insurance. They work as a primary, secondary kind of relationship, and For most Medicare supplement plans, you have full medical coverage, if not very close to it, depending on the policy that you particularly choose to go with. Now, since Medicare supplement plans don't cover the things that I mentioned earlier that Medicare doesn't cover either, you have to pick up those policies separate also. That's where you have Medicare Part D come into the equation, also purchased through private insurance companies. So, when you have Medicare Part D in the equation, they are basically D for drugs, a drug plan, a prescription plan, a pharmaceutical plan. Now, how much do Medicare supplements cost? It depends on where you live. In my home state in Utah, they can be anywhere between $80 a month to maybe $150 a month. If you live in Florida, they could be anywhere between $150 a month to $300 a month. If you live in New York, they could be anywhere between $300 a month and maybe $450 a month. A lot of it depends on where you live and what your state market has available to you. So please keep this in mind. Prescription plans can probably range, depending on where you live, anywhere between $10 a month and $50+ a month in premium. It just depends on what you need specifically. Now let's talk about the other side of the coin, the Medicare Advantage plan. Medicare Advantage plan, you take your A and your B. You still pay for Medicare Part B. There's really no way to get around that unless you're on Medicaid, like I mentioned earlier. Now, instead of running your Medicare through the government, you run your Medicare through a private insurance company. I really need you to get this. This is where most people get confused when it comes to Medicare Advantage plans. Medicare Advantage plans are also known as Part C plans because the government determines that they take your Part A, Part B, and D for drugs and combine it all together into one plan. I think Part C is personally a stupid name for it and just confuses people more than anything, but what does the government good at if not confusing people? Medicare Advantage plans essentially give you your medical, prescriptions. Some plans come with dental, vision, hearing, all wrapped into one neat, tight little package. Now, since you're running your Medicare through the government, doctors commonly refer to these plans as replacement plans. They don't like me using that terminology, but I think it is a good analogy. Think of it like it replaces your Medicare. It becomes your primary insurance. So Medicare does not have to pay 80% of your medical bills any longer. That takes a large burden off their shoulders, if you can imagine. So in exchange, Medicare funds this private insurance company every month to take care of you. In fact, it's quite a bit. I read the other day an article said that the average funding an insurance company will get in 2020 is roughly a little bit over $11,000 per year per person. Now, you still have to pay for Part B, but typically, Medicare Advantage plans have very low premiums. In fact, it's very common nowadays in 2020 that you will have access in your market to at least a couple Medicare Advantage plans that have no monthly premiums. So that would mean you pay for Medicare Part B and that's it. And if the Advantage plan does have a premium, it's quite typical for them to have a $20 a month premium, a $30 a month premium, maybe a $40 a month premium. The way that the benefits work on an Advantage plan is you have copays for everything. The copays might be lower or higher depending on your market because the plans vary from state to state and market to market. But you're going to have copays for everything. Very, very few Advantage plans have medical deductibles. You're just basically paying copays. Think along the terms of $5 to $10 for a primary care doctor visit, $40 to $50 for a specialist visit, $80 to $90 for an emergency room visit, something along those lines. Medicare Advantage plans do have maximum out-of-pockets to prevent you from having to spend too much out of your own pocket in medical bills. And like I mentioned, the drug coverage is typically included, although there are some out there that don't have drug coverage, so make sure that yours does if you're picking up one of these programs. Medicare Advantage plans also have networks of hospitals and doctors, whereas the other side of the coin, original Medicare with a supplement, do not. With a supplement plan, you can go to any doctor, any hospital in the country, as long as they accept Medicare assignment, which nowadays about 98% of doctors nationwide will do so. They are great. Medicare supplement plans for that reason are great at using on the go, on travel. They work the same in all 50 states, whereas Medicare Advantage plans do have networks. Now, some have very large networks, some have very small networks, some provide you fairly good coverage out of networks, some provide you no coverage out of networks. So those networks they vary widely depending on your particular situation. Like I mentioned, it's very common that Medicare Advantage plans will cover an array of things that original Medicare will not, such as increased preventative care, Dental, vision, hearing coverage is typically the norm with most of these plans, although some might have more than others. And, like I mentioned a couple of times now, the prescription coverage is included. You may be able to get some things like transportation benefits with an Advantage plan. Typically, you're going to have some form of silver sneakers or some gym membership program where the insurance company will help pay for a gym membership for you. And in addition to that, it's very common that you might get some kind of over-the-counter essential item benefits like aspirin, ibuprofen, fish oil, Band-Aids, vitamins, those kind of things. So if you can determine which way of these two ways is best for you to go, you can solve 80% of the headache of signing up for Medicare. When should you enroll for Medicare? When should you start this process of making a decision and seeing what's available in your area? I usually recommend 90 days before the month you turn 65. Medicare will always start on the first of your birth month, unless your birthday happens to be on the first, which at that point it starts a month sooner. Don't ask me why they do that. Nobody quite knows. I don't even think they do. But 90 days before is when you first become eligible, for the most part, to start making preparations. So that's the time period you're going to want to start this journey. Do you have to enroll into Medicare? Well, if you or your spouse are currently working and have credible coverage through your work, you can postpone Medicare if you like without any penalties. However, if you do not fall into this particular circumstance, you will be penalized for not taking Medicare, so we typically recommend it unless you're working and have coverage through your work or your spouse's work. These are the states that my company, Christian Brindle Insurance Services, can work with you in. We carry all of the major insurance companies nationwide that do Medicare supplement plans, Medicare Part D drug plans, Medicare Advantage plans, and we're here and available to help you. I'd love to talk with you personally. Our states are Colorado, South Carolina, Idaho, Oregon, Texas, Florida, and Utah. Again, that's Colorado, South Carolina, Idaho, Oregon, Texas, Florida, and Utah. Call today. We have multiple insurance companies, all of the largest companies, like I said. I host the Everything Medicare Podcast, which has become a national phenomenon about educating people on Medicare. We just passed 140 plus episodes, and we've accumulated a huge audience, over 15 to 20 different platforms. We're the most popular Medicare-based podcast on the internet today, if not number 2, depending on the website. My company is Christian Brindle Insurance Services. We specialize in Medicare health plans, and I would love to talk with you. Give our office a call, ask for me, and it'd be my pleasure to lend you a hand. As I mentioned before, if you need help enrolling into Medicare online, I'm going to leave a link down to that video tutorial we did a while back in the description, so make sure you don't miss that video. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope you got a lot out of that video where we kind of go through what you need to look for. There's a lot of propaganda out there nowadays that says one of these two sides that we discussed on which way you can go with your Medicare is the best and only way for everybody to go. And we just don't believe in propaganda. We don't believe in one size fits all, and we believe that everybody watching needs to pick what's best for them. Not everybody believes that. They don't have your best interest in mind. Anytime anyone says one side is better than the other every single time, and there's no place for the other side, you want to run away from those people quick, fast, and in a hurry. Hope you got a lot out of this video. Please do us a favor. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Comment on what you'd like to see in future videos and questions you have about Medicare. And subscribe for future Everything Medicare content. Thanks so much. Have a great day.